Thank you everyone for joining us. We're sorry we can't see you in person, so this is the closest we can get. But we're actually wanting to get your feedback. We want to hear your concerns, but we also want to give you the facts and information of exactly what you will be getting. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk out there, a lot of rumours, but we're going to get the facts to you. But also at the same time, we want to make sure that we try and get you the best possible outcome. This EBA has been difficult. It's been one of the most difficult EBAs to negotiate. David and Cameron have worked extremely hard. David is our Assistant Secretary and Cameron Granger, our Industrial Officer. As you probably may be aware, the policy guidelines is 2% last year in relation to wages increases across all union sectors. This year, it's actually dropped down to 1.5%. There's been a lot of policies put around the government to try and limit us in getting you what we believe is not enough money. We believe you're hard workers, you do extremely hard work, you put yourselves under risk, and you deserve a lot more. However, you don't want to hear about what I think. I think it's more important we hear what you think. So what I'm going to do is ask David Eden to give you a quick presentation on what exactly will be happening, but at the same time, I really want to hear your concerns. So please feel free to ask any clarifications. As David said, there's obviously a chat there where you can actually type in your questions, and at the end of the session, we'll take as much questions as possible. This won't be the first and last time that we will talk to you. There'll be a lot more communications coming out your way as well. So over to you, David. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Very much for that, Diana. Now, for the public sector Health Workers Union Food Services presentation. This is going to happen in two parts. We'll do a general presentation, which is what all employees covered by this agreement will be receiving under the new enterprise bargaining agreement. And the second part will be what is specific to the food services. If you are joining us today from Tweedle Family Health Services, Darlingford Upper Golden Nursing Home, Indigo North, the Queen Elizabeth Centre, Lyndoch Living, or Redcliffe's Community Aged Care, welcome back to the public sector agreement. It's been a while since we've had you under this agreement, and I hope you enjoy all the benefits of being back under the public sector enterprise bargaining agreement. So the first part of the presentation, as I said, is a general presentation. And firstly, what I'd like to do is talk about what an enterprise bargaining agreement is, because quite often, we deal with this sort of lingo day in, day out in this job. And sometimes when we're doing an enterprise bargaining agreement presentation, people's eyes glaze over and as though we're speaking a foreign language. So what I'll do is I'll give you a really simple explanation as to what an enterprise bargaining agreement is. And as you can see there's an image of a cake, and I refer to the modern award as the cake. And an enterprise bargaining agreement are all layers on top of the cake. It's the icing, it's the candles, it's the lollies, it's all the rest of it. So it enhances the cake. So what happens with enterprise bargaining is that it's like selling a car. You'll always throw a little bit more on it. And if you're fortunate enough to get more than what you're anticipating for the vehicle, then as a bonus to you. But the buyer will sometimes negotiate you back down, and they leave believing they've got a fantastic deal, but ultimately you got the price that you're after. So enterprise bargaining is sort of like that, where we'll always claim for more than what we'll end up settling on. But the employer also puts together a shopping list, if you like, of things that they want out of an enterprise bargaining agreement. So enterprise bargaining is two-way. We put together a shopping list, if you like, across our membership. We go and run surveys, we go and sit down with our members and work out exactly what they'd like. But the government also do this with your employers as well, to gather their shopping list. And what happens is that we sit on either side of the table, and we put our shopping lists together, and we start negotiating, and we end up with an enterprise bargaining agreement at the end of it. And depending on who's negotiated the best, the employers are either in front or we are. But this particular occasion, I can tell you, you guys are very much in front on this enterprise bargaining agreement. Next slide, thanks, Jose. So the government's wages policy this time around was interesting, to say the least. We had to negotiate the wages inside the government's wages policy, as does every other public sector union, whether you're in the police force, the AMBOs, the nurses, whoever is within the public sector needs to comply with the government's wages policy. Now, there are 3 pillars to the wages policy, and when we looked at the government's wages policy, we thought, wow, as a union, we can certainly work on pillar 3 to maximise the returns for our members. And I'll get into a bit more of an explanation of what pillar 3 is at the moment. But put it this way, our union was so successful at working within the government's wages policy, they've gone and changed the government's wages policy. So their pillar 1 was 2% for all unions in the public sector. That is now 1.5%. Unless you were the health professionals, they did what's known as a rollover agreement, and they got 2.5% just over 12 months ago, and no other changes to their conditions, but just a 2.5% wage increase. Well, now they fall firmly in the new government's wages policy, and they're only going to get 1.5. So if I was a health professional right now, I'd probably be pretty frustrated. But the pillars that I mentioned before, what can we do to access additional money through the government's wages? Pillar 3, thank you very much, Jose. Firstly, where we've been able to identify a particularly disadvantaged group, so there might be a group of, say, chefs or cooks that have been left behind in previous rounds of bargaining because they've been lost in the noise. There's particular groups under our agreement that make lots and lots of noise, and as a result, they end up with better and better enterprise bargaining agreements and wages, and others get left behind. So we want to address those groups that have been forgotten about to a certain extent. And the cooks and chefs are a prime example of that, is that, your wages, I don't think, have properly kept up with other classifications. So you've done particularly well out of this round of enterprise bargaining. We can get more money out of the government if we're supporting other government wages, other government policies. And one of those agendas or policies that the government has is the TAFE system. And the TAFE system hasn't done quite as well as the state government would have liked. However, lots of classifications under this agreement can have career path opportunities if they go through the TAFE system and obtain higher and higher qualifications. So we've developed new classification structures that support the other government's policy in reinvigorating the TAFE system. And the other area that we've been able to get additional monies is through equal opportunity. And as we know, there's lots of classifications that are covered under this agreement that are absolutely female dominated, and unfortunately even like for like classifications. So a male chef working next to a female chef over the same period of time, come retirement, the female will always retire with less in their superannuation, and that's because they're more likely to take family leave for childbirth, etc. So, next slide, thanks. Go on, you, Jose. How would you like an extra week's annual leave? That's right, there's an extra week's annual leave for all. So if you're currently a Monday to Friday worker and you've got 4 weeks annual leave a year, you will now receive 5 weeks annual leave a year. If you're a shift worker and working weekends and you already get 5 weeks annual leave a year, you're going to get 6 weeks annual leave a year. 6 weeks annual leave with the holiday loading on top of that certainly was a successful negotiation. However, the extra week is at a very, very substantial cost. And this is one of those two-way negotiation things that happen. And there was a trade-off for the additional week's annual leave. Next slide, thanks, Jose. So what we've talked about is the public holiday rates. The nurses have enjoyed the extra week's annual leave for many, many years, and they got that extra week's annual leave for this exact deal. And that is, at the moment, under your current agreement, if you work a public holiday, you get paid double time and a half. Under the new agreement, it will be double time unless the public holiday falls on a weekend, and then it will still be double time and a half. If you're a full-time employee and you're rostered off at the moment, you'll get time and a half. Under the new agreement, it will be single time. And if you're a part-time employee and you would ordinarily work that day of the week, you'd get paid time and a half to be rostered off. This proposal will be your average hours that you normally work throughout the week, paid at single time. So how employers are getting around the public holiday penalty payments at the moment is that they've got a lot of part-time employees employed under the agreement, not full-time, and they're manipulating rosters so part-timers aren't ordinarily working that day of the week, or what they're doing is providing employees with an additional day off. Now, the additional day off isn't a roster day off, it's an additional day because you've already had your 2 days off, for example, for the week. They give you a third day off. It's not your roster day off, it's an additional day. You get paid your usual day's pay for that. So it's not a public holiday penalty. And what will happen under the new agreement, you'll get paid the usual day's pay for that day to have it off. Next slide, thanks, mate. Long service leave access after 7 years. So what will happen is that this will be phased in over the life of the agreement. Currently, you can't access long service leave until you hit 10 years. What will happen as of 1 July this year, if this agreement gets voted up, is that you'll be able to access long service leave after 9 years. Next year, you'll be able to access it after 8 years, come July 1. And the following year after that, you'll be able to access it after 7 years and thereafter. What will happen is, though, you're not going to be paid your long service leave at the same rate as what you would at the 10-year mark. From 7 to 10 years, it will be paid in accordance with the State Long Service Leave Act. So it is a lower accrual, but hey, if you need early access to long service leave because you're tired, you're burnt out, want to do some travel, you might want to use it to have some family. You might also want to use it to access, to do additional study, for example. So after 7 years, you can take your long service leave and complete some studies. So those options are there. We do have an aging workforce, and as that aging workforce comes through and retires, it's being replaced by a younger workforce. And people who are younger are typically more transient. They don't stay in their job for 10 years to get long service leave. Well, this might be just the carrot that these young people are looking for. If I stick it out for another couple of years, I'll be hitting my 7 years, I'll get long service leave, I'll take a bit of a break. They might change careers or they might stay in the same job, but it might add to the longevity of the employees working in this sector, especially those younger ones coming through. Next slide, thanks, Josie. So how would you like to have a 3-day weekend every month? It'd be handy, wouldn't it? So what's happening is that, what has been happening is employers have been replacing full-time employees as they retire with part-time employees. And what they'll do is they'll employ them just under the full-time threshold, so they don't have to provide the employee with an ADO. What this agreement will do is that any employee who's currently doing 37 hours a week or more will be provided the opportunity of changing their rostering practices to get an ADO once a month. Doesn't mean to say you're only going to be working your 7.6 hours a day and get an ADO. You'll have to work 8 hours a day, and you, as people who do get ADOs do, because what happens is that you bank that 0.4 to be able to take it once a month as an ADO. So Mildura is a really good example of where back in 1998, when Ramsay's took over the running of the public sector hospital up there, the first thing they did was they got rid of everyone's ADOs. Well, this will enable the likes of Mildura Hospital to reclaim their ADOs that they lost so many years ago. So 3-day weekends are on the agenda for those who are working 37 hours a week or more. Next slide, thanks, mate. Workload was a huge concern for our members, regardless of whether you're working in a kitchen or on the wards or in the laundries. Wherever you're working, or in administration, wherever you seem to be working in the public sector, there's more and more work pressures on people. And what we've managed to incorporate into this enterprise bargaining agreement is a fantastic new workload management clause, which incorporates WorkSafe's guidance on fatigue. So this union, along with a number of other unions, worked for nearly 2 years with WorkSafe, developing a guidance for employers. And if you, as an employer, if you adopt everything that's within those guidance materials, you're considered to be occupational health and safety compliant. So to be able to embed this guidance into an enterprise bargaining agreement is very, very powerful, because you don't necessarily need to have a WorkSafe inspector to come out and look at your workload anymore. It can be dealt with under the enterprise bargaining agreement by using WorkSafe's guidance material to address workload issues. What employers tend to have done in the past is that you go through the grievance procedure, and what happens under the grievance procedure is that the status quo will remain until the grievance is resolved. So you rock up to work, you find that you're 2 staff down on the plating line. You raise the issue with your employer, and your employer listens to what your problems are, but they don't really address it. It's part of the grievance procedure. The status quo remains. You continue to work, you flog your guts out all day, and at the end of the day, the whole thing's forgotten about. Everyone leaves exhausted. It won't be dealt with under the grievance procedure. Under the new enterprise bargaining agreement, it will be dealt with as an OH&S issue, and the employers must be compliant with the guidance material that's been put together by WorkSafe around fatigue management. Next slide, thanks, mate. So if you are a health and safety representative, please let the union know. We'd like to keep our records up to date, and we don't have as many health and safety reps on our system as we know exist out there across our membership. So please update your information with us if you're a health and safety representative. But if you are a health and safety rep, or you have one elected in your department, you are entitled to the initial 5-day training course, and you're also entitled to a 1-day update every 12 months. If you're a OH&S rep in regional Victoria, we recommend Be Safe, and the website details are there. And if you are a metropolitan OH&S rep, we recommend Victorian Trades Hall Council, and the web link is there for there as well. It will take you straight to where you can enrol to do your training. The employers are obliged to pay for all costs when it comes to your training as a health and safety rep, as well as all of your wages while you attend that course. Next slide, thanks, mate. Now, this idea of OH&S department placement come about with my time that I worked at St John of God in Ballarat. And on my floor, I was elected as a health and safety rep. I went off and did my 5-day course. I came back. Part of my role was that I'd go around inspecting what was going on a regular basis, and making sure the machinery worked and all the maintenance was being done, and assessing any health and safety risks. So when I was doing that, I was approached by the health and safety manager and asked whether or not I wanted to come over and work in the health and safety department on a secondment basis. So they wanted to borrow me to go and work in the health and safety department alongside the health and safety manager. And I took up the option. So every fortnight I'd go over there 1 day a week and work alongside the health and safety manager. And it took me a while to work out why this arrangement was happening. And I wasn't the only health and safety representative that was working over in the health and safety department with health and safety manager. There was a chef in there, and there are other classifications as well. And then it dawned on me that the health and safety manager actually wasn't from the health industry and didn't have much of a clue about what was happening in the hospital. So he was using us as a resource. He was picking our brains, and we were helping him develop occupational health and safety policies to protect employees working at St John of God Hospital in Ballarat. But it wasn't a one-way learning experience. He wasn't just learning from us what we did. We also learned off him what the health and safety manager does. And as I said, one of the people who was on secondment in there at the same time as me was the chef. She went on and did her certificate 4 in OH&S. And when that OH&S manager left the organisation, she actually applied and got the job. And I'd love to see more of our members have opportunities to get formal qualifications around OH&S with a clear knowledge of what happens in the health industry to become health and safety managers into the future in hospitals. Next slide, thanks, mate. Now, another concern that we have is performance improvement plans being forced on people who have got a disability. Now, disability might not be something you're born with. It might be something you've acquired, such as a workplace injury. And let's face it, none of us are getting any younger. I've seen plenty of pot scrubbers wearing out their wrists, scrubbing away on those pots, or you know, someone on the plating line taking a plate of dishes around to the dishwasher and slipping on the floor and having an injury. Sometimes it's an immediate injury, but sometimes things just wear out through repeated stress. Or it might be that you've had a bit of a meltdown, or as I said before, we've got an aging workforce. We might have a little bit of dementia creeping in as well. And you might have a bit of a chuckle about that, but we have had members with early onset dementia as well that we've had to go and represent through disparity and performance management meetings, which is really sad. So what we've done is we've built a trigger into the performance management clause. So if during the investigation it's determined that you've got a disability, then it won't be dealt with under the performance improvement clause in the enterprise bargaining agreement. It's better dealt with under the equal opportunity part of the enterprise bargaining agreement. So the employer will be required to put modifications and changes to your work to enable you to continue to work safely. And I'll give you a bit of an example. As a patient service assistant, you might have been in your heyday able to, you know, clean and make 30 beds a day, but you're struggling now to do 16. Your employer can't drag you in, put you on a performance improvement plan if it's due to a disability. They're going to have to manage it a different way. And it might be that you have different starting or finishing times, or there might be particular duties that you can't do, whilst the majority of your work you can, and those duties you can't do. There's plenty of NDIS funding out there for employers to access to employ someone else to come in and do the position or the jobs or tasks that you cannot do. So that's you know, something that's very close to our heart as a union. We, as I said, see far too often employees working for the hospitals for decades and decades, pouring their heart and soul into the place, only to be performance improvement planned out of the place. Well, that's going to have to stop now. Next slide, thanks. Workplace trainer careers advisors. Well, under your current enterprise bargaining agreement, we negotiated a workplace trainer careers advisor in every hospital across the state of Victoria. They are there to help you and your career path. They're not there to help the employer implement their compulsory training schedules. The idea of the workplace trainer careers advisor is that the local agreement implementation committees, and I hope some of you guys are on those committees, decide how the workplace trainer careers advisor position is going to work for your organisation and what sort of courses you'd like to see rolled out across your networks as well. Well, the workplace trainer careers advisor roles have taken on a couple of additional responsibilities, and that is where a position is being deemed to be redundant, then the workplace trainer careers advisor will get involved at the earliest possible convenience for possible retraining and redeployment. So they're there to assist you. And also, if you've had a workplace injury and it doesn't look like you're going to be able to return to your pre-injury job, the workplace trainer careers advisor is also there to help with those retraining and redeployment opportunities. Next slide. Under this agreement, so we've got currently 30 EFT, so it works out to be more than 30 full-time positions because some hospitals have only got part-time positions, but there's 30 EFT stretched across all the hospitals in Victoria under this current agreement. That's going to have an additional 15 EFT put in, so that's 45 EFT across the state of Victoria. So if you're at Ballarat Health Services As an example, you've currently got 0.8 of an EFT. You're going to go to full-time employment immediately after this agreement's certified, and at the last year of the agreement, you'll get an additional EFT. So Ballarat Health Services will go from 0.8 to 2 EFT as an example of what's going to happen. So where there's expansion of networks, they'll receive the extra EFT in the first instance, and what will happen is that it will be slowly rolled out over the life of the agreement. So an additional 15 EFT of workplace trainer careers advisors across the state of Victoria. And to give you an idea of what the workplace trainer careers advisors do, we'd like to play you this video.
I know where you're coming from, a long road and the money's gone. All the games where you played your part from the very start just to come this far. You should know I believe in you, every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it up now and bring it on, this will be your day. 'Cause baby you were born to win, never give up, never give in, you were born to win, your destiny is victory. Yeah, 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 baby, baby, you were born to win. You set it up and you knock it down. You're all set now to rock this town. You don't really need to play it low. Just get up and go. This is all your show. You should know I believe in you. Every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it up now and bring it on. This will be your day. 'Cause baby you were born to win. Never give up, never give in. You were born to win. Your destiny is victory. Yeah, 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 baby, you were born to win.
Thank you very much, Jose, for playing that. That hopefully gives you guys a better idea or clear understanding what the workplace trainer careers advisor does for you. What we've got now is some improvements around study leave. We've seen time and time again employees or members of ours applying for study leave. The employer will say, well, what's that got to do with your job at the moment? And you'll say nothing, and I'll say, well, no, you can't have your study leave. So as a food and domestic services assistant, for example, you might want to access study leave to become an allied health assistant. Your employer at the moment is saying no. Under the new agreement, they'll have to say yes. Anything public sector health related, they will not be able to refuse you access to for study leave. Also, what we've done is introduced a flexible work arrangement. So where you've exhausted your study leave, you might say, well, I want to do late shifts, for example, instead of early shifts because I'm at TAFE in the mornings, or there's particular days of the week that you're at TAFE, or there might be a placement at the end, a clinical placement at the end of your course that you might need to do as well. So all these things can be entered into under a flexible work arrangement. One of the other things that hold people back is the lack of funds. And what we've done is we've reimagined the multi-skilling allowance, and we've turned it into an education incentive allowance. So any employee who currently doesn't have a qualification in the health industry will be getting a education incentive allowance. That's $250 twice a year. However, this year it will be one payment. but in future it will be $250 in March and $250 in September. This year will be $500. The idea of that is that you don't necessarily have to be enrolled in a course, but we would rather you not use the lack of finance as an excuse not to go on and advance your career. So that $250 is there to help you buy books or put it towards a laptop, because a lot of the courses are online now. Or it might be that you have to travel somewhere for a clinical placement. All that money is there to help you. And as I say, you don't need to be entered into a course or doing a course, but we heavily encourage you to go on and do further education. So the $250 education incentive allowance twice a year. Next slide, thanks, Matt. So superannuation will be paid into your super fund every 4 weeks under this agreement. At the moment, there's only a legal requirement for the employers to pay in quarterly. Why should they be earning interest off your hard-earned superannuation? So under the new agreement, your employer will have to make super contributions on a monthly basis. But there's even better news. And as I mentioned earlier, you might be a female chef working alongside a male chef doing exactly the same hours, same income, but come retirement, your superannuation fund has less in it than your male counterpart. And the reason for that is you've probably taken some time off for parental leave. Under this enterprise bargaining agreement, so 1 July this year, your employer will continue to make superannuation contributions based on the preceding 12 months income earnings of yourself. So every 4 weeks, they'll be putting super contributions into your super account, even on your unpaid component of your parental leave. That's absolutely huge for the young workforce planning to have a family. Come retirement age, you're going to be able to retire with the same amount of super as your male counterpart. Congratulations. Next slide, thanks, mate. We don't have this pop up very often in the food services area. There's not a lot of disputes around what classifications people are. It's pretty clear cut. But there are other areas, especially in admin, where you could pretty much drive a truck and park it inside the definition. So there's lots of arguments as to where people should sit under the classification structure. So what we've done is set up an industry review panel. So those arguments can be heard in front of an industry review panel instead of taken off to the Fair Work Commission, where you're more than likely to get a Fair Work Commissioner who has absolutely no knowledge about what you do in our industry. So might not help you guys at the moment, this industry review panel. As I said, there's not many classifications that we have disputes about in food services, but there are certainly other areas that we have problems getting people into the right classifications. So that does it for the general presentation. And now what I'll do is move directly onto the food services presentation. This is the shorter part of the presentation, and it gets to the dollars and cents, and that's what you're mainly interested in. So second slide, mate. So nauseous work allowance will be paid to food and domestic service assistants in the pay period containing 1 December each year. So we tried to time this $350 payment just before Christmas, so you can have a little bit more money to splash around at Christmas time. At the end of the day, food and domestic service assistants are the lowest paid employees in the kitchen, and they could certainly do with all the help they can get to put some lovely meals on the table at Christmas time or buy some presents for their family. So the nauseous allowance will be paid to food and domestic service assistants in the pay period containing 1 December each year and to the value of $350. Next slide. Tool allowance. So depending on which hospital you go to, some cooks and chefs have their own tools, and as a result, you should be receiving a tool allowance for that. So if you've got your own knife sets and things like that, you don't use the hospital supplied one, you get a tool allowance. If the hospital supplies your knives and other equipment that you might need, you're not entitled to the tool allowance. Next slide, thanks, mate. There's also a cook proficiency payment for apprentices. So as you increase your proficiency as an apprentice, your payments will go up. So first, second, third year, and on the third year, you're essentially on par with the fully qualified chefs and cooks within your environment. So there's a proficiency payment there. Also for apprentices, for you to be mindful of. I know there's not a lot of apprentices happening in the kitchens with the number of people, number of kitchens across the state moving to cook chill. But there are some regional hospitals that still do cook fresh, and there may well be some apprentices out there. Next slide. Here's education incentive allowance will be paid to food and domestic service assistants grade 2. So that's a food and domestic service assistant with more than 3 months experience. As I said before, it's $500 this year. But it will be paid in 2 sums as of next year at $250 per occasion, March and September each year. So that's to help you purchase classroom books, computers, or it might be to help you with your accommodation if you need to do a clinical placement or something like that. Next slide. Promotion of local workforce under the enterprise bund agreement. We want to see a reduction in the amount of 457 visas being used in hospitals. We want to see jobs for locals, and this is called out in the enterprise bargaining agreement. So obviously there are going to be occasions where the hospitals can't attract enough qualified cooks and chefs, and 457 visas will inevitably occur. But they're not going to be able to jump straight to the 457 opportunity without at least exploring local employment opportunities first. And that might mean that there's food and domestic service assistants or others in the hospital that might want to become a trade cook and do a Cert 3 or a Cert 4 or a diploma in commercial cooking. That's what they should be investing in: local workforce, giving people career path opportunities, and the 457s must be a last resort. Next slide, thanks, mate. So classifications you might hear. So the food and domestic services assistant with less than 3 months is one classification at the moment, and food and domestic service assistant more than 3 months is the other classification at the moment under your current agreement. What that will change to is simply food and domestic service assistant grade 1, which just means you've got less than 3 months experience, or a food and domestic service assistant grade 2, which means that more than 3 months experience. So just a little bit of a tidy up there to differentiate the food and domestic service assistants. Next slide, thanks, mate. Cook grade 1 is a new one, and that means a person who does not hold a trade qualification, who is employed as a cook by a hospital where other cooks are employed. So that's a new classification. So at the moment, there's a number of cooks that fall into that category, but the definition is pretty tight on this, and that is where you are employed where there's other cooks employed. So you can't be a cook employed alone as a cook grade 1, for example. Next slide. Cook grade 2 is another new classification that's coming in, and that's going to pick up those who prepare or cook meals for people with specific dietary requirements, or it might be a pastry cook or a sweets cook, and also someone who is a cook employed alone. You're going to be reclassified as a cook grade 2. Next slide. Cook grade 3 means a person employed as a cook who is qualified, who is a qualified trade cook. Next slide, thanks, mate. So this has really irked me ever since I started working for the union in 1998, when I was privileged enough to see a cook chill kitchen in Ballarat, where the cooks and chefs were essentially standing in front of the same big kettle all day, cooking big batches of casseroles or stews or curry or whatever they happen to be cooking, but just big batches. And because of the amount of meals that they were putting out, they were all either a second cook grade A or a chef grade A. You go into a smaller regional town where it's usually just the one cook or the chef or chef employed. They're doing all the orders, negotiating with suppliers. They're doing more of the food and domestic services stuff, the plating and all the rest of it. They're cooking fresh. And because they're such a small hospital, they're considered a cook or a chef grade D. Now, this is the only classification that we have in this agreement that your wage levels or your classifications are determined on the number of meals or the amount of meals that the kitchen produces, as opposed to the qualification. And it's always frustrated me. So what we've done under this enterprise bargaining agreement is gone, your qualification's your qualification, regardless of where you work, whether it's a small hospital, cooking fresh, or it's a large hospital, doing big batches of cook chill. If you've got a formal qualification, you must be recognised. That formal qualification. So over the life of the agreement, we're going to see the cooks and the second cooks and the chefs' wages aligned by the end of the agreement. So big catch-ups for the cooks and chefs grade D, C and B to A, but A haven't also been forgotten. Next slide, thanks, mate. So these are the wage rates, and what I might do is get Jose to hover the mouse over, say, the food and domestic grade 2, for example. Yep. And your current rate as a food and domestic service system grade 2 is 930.50. And what we'll do is these are just with first year of experience. They're not with additional years of experience. So you go up to 5 years of experience, but it's not reflected in this chart. It'll just take up too much room. So you'll go from 930.50 in the first year up to 955.10. So that'll be backdated until 1 July this year. So the bump is around $25 a week wage increase from July 1 this year. And the following year, you go up to 979.70, then up to 1,040.30, and then 1,029 in 2024. That equates to a 10.6% wage increase over 4 years. Remember, the government's wages policy is 8%, and you guys have got 10.6%. Other cook, if you move down the screen a little bit to other cook, there we go. And you'll see what the current rate is 930.50. So that's the same as a food and domestic services assistant, but they've got cooking responsibilities. Your new classification will be cook grade 1, and that'll be 971.90. The following year, it will go to 1023.40, then 1074.70, and then 1096.20. So other cooks' wage increase over the life of the agreement is 17.8%. Cook employed alone, and this is one of the ones that I thought was particularly cruel at the moment, where you could be a cook or a chef employed, the only cook or chef employed in a hospital. Sorry, not a chef. You haven't got the chef qualification. You might be a cook without a qualification, but you're the only cook in that hospital. You're currently getting 950.60. What will happen in 2021? So 1 July, you'll go to 987, and then in 2022, you'll be reclassified as a cook grade 2, and the cook grade 2 will jump you up to 1076.60. Then 1139.60, and then 1202.70. And the cook employed alone's wage increase equates to 26.5% over the life of this agreement. Food Monitor. Food Monitor will, their wage increases, your mouse back up a little bit, mate, back up, that's it. Food Monitor. So Food Monitors, your classification remains the same, but your wages certainly don't. Your wage increase is 25.2%. Now, I keep casting your mind back to what the government's wages policy is, 8%. You got 25.2%. Now, as a second cook grade D, so it's just underneath that, your wage increases will equate to 24.9%. As a cook grade, second cook grade C, 22.7%. As a cook, second cook grade B, 19.9%. And as a cook, second cook grade A, 13.9%. And if Jose takes the mouse right across to the final column in 2024, you'll see the wage alignments there. So all the wages align at $1,264.50. So that takes me to the point, regardless of where you work, whether you're producing 2,000 meals a day or you're producing 100 meals a day, your qualification is your qualification, and it all lines up at the end of it. If you go down now to the chef grade D, your wage increase over the life of the agreement is 32.8%. You top it out, you're the highest wage, that's the highest percentage wage increase out of any classification under this enterprise bargaining agreement. The chef grade C is 29.7% wage increase. The chef grade B is a 23.3%, and the chef grade A is 17.9%. And if Jose takes his mouse across the final column again, you'll see they all line up at the end of the agreement. So regardless of what you're doing, as in how many meals a day your kitchen's producing, your qualification is your qualification. So if you're a chef or a cook at the moment, second cook working in Melbourne, and you're thinking about a tree change, think about it long and hard. Over the next 4 years, you could be potentially earning the same rate of pay as you are now in regional Victoria, and it's a beautiful place to live. So I think we've absolutely delivered as a union for the food services stream. There are other streams that haven't done as well this round of bargaining. They're making plenty of noise about it too. They're not happy that the food services have done as well as this, but it's been a long time in coming, and it's finally been addressed. Your rates of pay have been lifted well and truly, and I hope you all enjoy. And that's it for the presentation. Be safe, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Good night.